talks all about that type of thing. And what you're talking about, one young lady in particular, she was as a baby, she was actually in that situation. Her father started to, her to do that to her, and then she was, according to her book, she was actually trafficked out to, well, she had a handler, and that person, I'm calling him a person, we talked about earlier about why he's not dead, he's still alive. And the reason why she called it Thanks for the Memories was because she said that she was sold to Mr. Hope, Bob, who, that's his famous song. But he also says that as a child, at 12, she was flown in to the White House to pillow talk with the then JFK. And they told her when he was going to be taken out. So it wasn't just Maryland.
Well, it was a buzz that was real heavy with Secret Service and with the CIA leading up to that the old man Bush and LBJ was collaborating to change the president because he wasn't playing ball. That's what they said. That was also, when they say he wasn't playing ball, it was also in reference to Fidel Castro and the Cuban Revolution and the missile crisis. Because Fidel Castro was an American baseball player in college. And a lot of people don't know that.
So if they're looking for that Thanks for the Memories PDF, it's by someone named Bryce, Brice Taylor. Very interesting read. It's not interesting as much as it's shocking, but it's the stuff that goes on that, we're now just finding out about. So, wow. Someone says Hollywood's closed, so they hit Studio City. They also doing a lot of stuff in Georgia. Georgia seems to be the East Coast Hollywood. A lot of things are taking place in Georgia.
That's Tyler Perry's supposed to be putting us up our own studios to bypass the usury contracts and the 360 contracts and the sex deals for movie parts and all that. So Tyler Perry's job was to build and establish our studios for the people from the land.
Well, okay. Yeah, my middle son has been an extra in some of his movies, and he lives right near. He's not far from the studio, so I'm glad to hear that he's not a part of the problem. I didn't know, because you never know.
Well, they classify him as a huge problem.
They or us?
They, the system.
Okay. The system.
He's a headache that they can't figure out a way around it because they can't. All of the frauds that they wanted to hit him with tax evasion, but he was paying his taxes.
Okay.
Right. Then they was going to try the sex scandal. So he portrayed characters where it wouldn't work. Right. So everything that they was going to use against him, somebody was tipping him off on how to play his hand so he could stay a step ahead of him. I got my suspicion, but I don't know it to be the fact yet.
Wow. Let me see. We're gonna go out I'm gonna take a few more questions. If there are actually any questions, I'm kind of looking at some comments. Research background. Okay. Let me see. Any questions? Y'all? While we got this record keeper.
It's funny you call me that because that's what I call Todd.
Really? Okay, but you record keeper, Gresham knows a lot. He knows a lot. But I'm saying you and I have spoken. I think the first time we had a conversation, we talked for 2 hours and 18 minutes, and that was an introductory conversation. And the next time I called you for something, I was like, I think I woke you up. An hour plus later, we were still talking. Because the knowledge was coming out, and I just appreciate you, and I appreciate knowledge. Anybody who, in some of the folks here in the chat appreciate the dearth, if you will, and the breadth of knowledge that you bring, and you're able, almost all subjects that are brought up, you are able to speak on it, and that's a good thing. I mean, you're not stuttering and stammering and saying I think and so forth. When you can be definitive about what it is you say, and then it's up to each one of us to put it in our own filter. And if it resonates, fine. If it doesn't, it's okay. Everything, the truth don't work with everybody.
Well, we're not all supposed to always believe the same thing all the time.
That's right.
That doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, we'd be cookie cutter.
It's 8.4 billion people on the planet. Can you imagine everybody trying to do the same thing every day? That don't make sense. So everybody ain't supposed to agree with me.
Right.
But they're supposed to be triggered to go do some research on their own to find out where I might be missing something, because they might be the missing piece.
Right. Yeah.
The fact that they disagree with me could send them back to get a piece of information that could bridge a gap somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's why we all become equally important. No big eyes, no little U's, no respecter of persons. Right. Mm-hmm. Right is right, wrong is wrong, and you can't dress that motherfucker up however you want it just because you want it to be different. Right is gonna still be right, and wrong gonna still be wrong.
Right.
We gonna still be over here, and we ain't from Rome. And they say all roads lead back to Rome, which is the papal bulls. The papal bulls is the decrees of the Pope to usurp the land, or what they call execute the white man's burden of civilizing the world. But how you gonna civilize somebody that was building monuments you can't even duplicate?
Speaking of monuments and stuff, I do have something I wanted to bring up. You mentioned the World's Fair, and I don't know how many really, we didn't go into depth into that, but I started studying it just recently, like in the last 2 or 3 months, not even that far back, about these World Fairs and these orphan trains that were going on around the same time. And these, they had these massive structures that they put in certain places, that they opened World's Fairs in, and they gave the public the illusion or the lie that they had created this just to bring forth technology, more recent technology, when the truth of it is these had existed. Question 1, where did the people go that used to inhabit those places? How did they get rid of the real inhabitants of that? That's my first question.
A lot of our major cities like Chicago, Detroit, New Orleans, a couple cities in New Jersey, the people were going to fight the Seminole Wars. So they was leaving the cities going southeast. That's why the largest concentration of us was in the South at the turn of the century.
So because the structures were already so when you look at these structures, though, that says they put out these old movies about the Wild Wild West and the people going west in the wagon trains and stuff, there were massive buildings and marble and crystal looking places and stuff that existed.
We still have castles all over the land that's thousands of years old. Most of them they turned into major prisons.
Really?
Yeah. Look up Marquette Prison in upstate Michigan in the UP. That used to be a castle. They turned it into a prison.
Wow.
I think San Quentin, there's a couple of them in Pennsylvania that they turned into prisons. Right? Then there's castles. One thing I wanted to talk about, Manson. This is the LSD edition. Lord Stone's disciple. This is a Charlie Manson, Helter Skelter. Understand what they doing, and you won't be tricked. Ethiopian New Year. Good news. 9/24. Greetings. Y'all flipping mad signs in the comments, and I'm seeing what they meaning in real time. So one of the things that gave us a heads up for the 24th, which I don't know if anything will happen or not, but one of the speakers overseas, one of the heads of state or chancellors or some shit like that, said that this is going to be a day that you're going to know exactly what you was doing when the shit hit the fan. That's what he said, basically. So everybody's watching, but I don't know. This shit should have been hit the fan because it stink real bad, like it didn't turn rancid or something. So, yeah. So we going from the silver age into the golden age. the Silver Age is a rediscovering of what's been lost. So it's a artificially induced Kali Yuga at the end, right before the close of the age, because somebody's job out of Big Mama house is to find who got conjures open and make them close that shit out. And don't matter what you do, they got to close that shit out, though. They got to agree to close the dirty conjures out at the close of the age, because if they remain open, it sends a reverse vortex of energy, and it's not going to turn out good for that family line. So, anyway, we going to go over something I went over once before about a year ago, and it's the Charles Manson story. There's a version that they tell us, but they tell us the real deal at the same time they tell us that the man was insane. You know, Charles Manson is the first so-called whistleblower / conspiracy theorist. He the first one. In 1960s, he was in a CIA experiment for mind control and manipulation of groups of people, right? And there was another guy also in the class with him. You know him by the name of Joseph Sinkyu, from kidnapping Patty Hearst and forming the SLA, Symbionese Liberation Army. Anyway, in this class where they teaching them mind control and how to use LSD to give guided meditations and altered states of consciousness, basic shaman training. But instead of using the peyote or the toadstool, they was using a manufactured version called LSD. So while they was doing this, they teaching him all of the shit that they about to do. Yep, MKUltra. They are teaching him how they using the chemicals in the water based off MKUltra experiments. They found that the chemical fluoride is a byproduct of aluminum production. If you got an aluminum pan in your kitchen and you run your finger across it, fluoride is the gray stuff that'll be residual on your finger. That's aluminum fluoride. Okay. The fluoride causes the body to go into protection mode, and it consumes the pineal gland with a waxy substance. If a waxy substance stays on the pituitary gland too long, it makes the individual compliant and susceptible to follow orders, because they've been cut off from their higher consciousness in the process. So they explained how it worked to Charles Manson. They explained that how they were planning to cause a race war at the close of the age to prove a point about their control over the masses using the media. So they told him about his opponent, who was going to get an army of melanated men, and he was to get an army of pale-skinned men, and they were supposed to go to war with each other. So now they setting them up, and while they setting them up, remember, all of this time Charles Manson's supposed to be on parole when he's forming what's known as the Manson family. And Joseph Sinkyu haven't got out of prison yet to start building his army, but he's on his way home. Okay. So Charles Manson, in turn, after learning all of this shit from his handler. Now, for those who remember Jim Jones in Guyana, the handler for Charles Manson was also Jim Jones' CIA handler. You got to remember that. Now, Jim Jones was taught mind control by the same exact individual who taught mind control to Charles Manson and
Mr. DeFreeze, Joseph Sinque. So once this is done, they see Charles Manson building his family, but he's telling them everything that these motherfuckers is planning under a banner of some shit called Helter Skelter. Helter Skelter then becomes a moniker synonymous with what we call anarchy, right? And then you have the anarchist cookbook that's telling you how to fight the government and how to prepare and all of this stuff for government tyranny. So while Charles Manson teaching these kids this shit, he's not doing what the fuck the CIA told his ass to do. Form an army, attack the niggas. So Charles is telling the story to the Manson family about the government's plan to, CIA was a medical experiment at Jonestown. Yep, that was Jim Jones was the manufactured Messiah type. This is how they always know if a person professing to be the Christ is telling the truth or not. If he a man, he automatically a fraud. The Christ is a female. So they all know this, but you don't know this. So since you don't know this, you don't know that David Koresh don't look like the Christ image that they gave you, because the Christ has always been the queen of heaven and earth the whole fucking time. That shit's never changed since the foundation of the universe. Why in the fuck would it suddenly change now? The Christ is only gonna be the same motherfucker every goddamn time she come back, cause it's always at the close of the age where she comes to see the development of her youth. You got to be wiser than the goddamn serpent and meek as a lamb, but you got to be strong as a gorilla. And here I am, ready to dribble these motherfuckers up and down the court. So Charles Manson, seeing in the eyes of the of the government, was not that he didn't start the war. He's telling these motherfuckers the whole fucking plan. He's telling these girls the whole fucking plan. Now you got to look at who is these girls he's telling the plan to, and why do they give a fuck that he's telling the plan to these girls? Well, one of the things is this. He's telling these girls who's drifters, wanderers away from home, trying to escape their well-to-do parents, right? Trying to escape their well-to-do parents. And in the process, they running into Charles Manson on this expensive-ass ranch. Now remember, the nigga don't got no job. He don't even got no job. So they say that this man was letting him stay in the barn, but ain't nobody never showed us who this man was that's supposed to be letting him stay in the barn. Right? Now, when they see that Charles Manson is drawing a following, what they do? They send some guy named Tex in to infiltrate. And Tex was the one who told the girls that Charles wanted somebody dead. At no time in any of their testimony, the police, the girls, anybody, Charles, nobody at any time ever said Charles Manson killed anybody. But now, when you look him up, they list him as one of the most vicious serial killers in history, right? And from listing him that way, they also declare him as insane, right? So now, then they label him as a racist. Now, he a serial killer, insane, racist. All the time, he ain't told nobody to kill nobody but they blame it all on him because now they can use that as the pretext to take him off the street for not doing what the fuck they told him to do. Start the fucking race war. So Joseph Sinkyu get out and he starts snatching the same demographic of youth that Charles attracted to build his Symbionese Liberation Army. Right? Now, why did he choose them? Because he had to feel some kind of way like we was being used to fight somebody else's war. So why won't we use their kids to fight our war? But the philosophy of Symbionese is a symbiotic relationship.